All right, thank you. And I want to give Kathleen a chance to maybe say a few words before we jump into the artist talk. Kathleen.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So good to see folks here tonight. And Michael, thank you for your introduction. And I just want to say that everything you've done for Northwind over the 7 years that you've been involved has brought the institution to a new level. And it's not goodbye, it's aloha. And I'm honored to try to continue your legacy at Northwind Art. And you've done extraordinary work. And we're thrilled you're not leaving the community. So Anne and Greg, it's been wonderful working with you both. I think the exhibition turned out really beautifully. I think your work complements each other very well. And I'm looking forward to hearing from both of you. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Well, Anne, I'm going to queue up our PowerPoint presentation that we put together with some slides, and just bear with me while I share that. And then you can go ahead and And let's start the artist talk. Let's see. Just a second here. Just one minute. Bear with me while I move through these slides fast. Okay, here we go. There we go. Go ahead.
And you need to unmute.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Thank you. Am I supposed to do something now?
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You can.
Okay, I missed that instruction. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. You can go.
Now, do I also turn the pages, or do I just respond as
No,
it
I'll go ahead and turn the slides, but you can go ahead and start your presentation.
Oh, okay. So I don't need. I'm not speaking to this slide particularly. I'm just.
No, not necessarily.
I'm going to start out then by reading my artist statement because it's a succinct and short little statement of everything that I do and believe in. I make objects in clay that occupy the space between functional pottery and sculpture. Textured and weathered surfaces that suggest excavation, erosion, and the passage of time, whether in nature or industry, inspire my work. I try for an economy of means, reductive forms, a horizon created by contrasting black and white, and I'm endlessly fascinated by the way that clay, in its rigid fired state, is able to reveal its former soft and malleable state. And now I'm still not quite clear on what we're doing here. Sorry. Do you want me to be doing something?
I'll change the slide, and you can just talk about the work and.
Okay. Okay. So this is a photo of me in my studio and working on we're using red clay, as you'll see a lot of, and I'm working to develop a installation for an event called NCECA, which is a big deal in the ceramics community in Sacramento at its national conference, and it's about water and environmental concerns. And these pieces are going to suggest pipes, industrial pipes, and the flow of water, and the idea of mentoring as well. So the flow of water being a metaphor for all of the challenges in that part of the world. On the right side, these white pieces have been really representative of much of the work I've been doing the last 5 years. I talk a little bit, answering a few of the questions about the white and black, and the white is glaze, but the white is a slip, which is the name for very thin clay, and I brush it on, and I brush it over a different kind of slip that's faster drying, and by so doing, it becomes a scumbling effect. If any of you are painters, you'll know, at least we know that one of us is is a painter. Greg, do you ever work with scumbling in your work?
Oh, it's a standby. It's the only way to paint.
Yeah, and so that's all the white that you see in this image is scumbled slip. Okay, should we go to the next one? This is my studio in the Inscape building, and it's I'm lucky enough to have space to have both a little display space as well as workspace. So it's a beautiful room with tall ceilings and lots of light. These two pieces are are soda fired, and they're quite large. The one on the left, you could put your arms around it, but just barely be able to touch. And the soda firing is a kind of a gas firing with the addition of soda, hence the name. That sort of blows up a little bit in the firing, and it gives it a feel of explosiveness, of fieriness, of really coming out of the earth to me. The one on the right is unusual because it was fired upside down. It was built upside down. So the part you see up here was on the wheel head, and the smaller part. It's hard to manage small bottoms and big tops. so that's a way of handling that. Next. I really like this piece. The white on white is really subtle. It looks sort of, looks a little bit like a tree bark to me. And this is quite tall, 24 inches tall, maybe taller, and tall and skinny, and it feels very much of the earth. Next. These two pieces are what I call the big brown piece and the smaller brown piece, but there's a lot of my work was inspired by baskets, and so I did a lot of looking around in collections of Native American baskets. And what I really love about this series is that what I was trying to do is to capture the slump. So a Native American with carrying woods and sticks and maybe a baby on their back over year after year gets sort of a sense of a slump. It's the best word I have for it, and it shows it's kind of what I said in the artist statement, in that it's the way that clay in its rigid fire state is able to reveal its former soft and malleable states. This is the perfect example of that. So this feels like this flowingness and this sort of slumpiness looks like it happened, and it did happen with wet clay. Once it's dry clay, of course, it doesn't slump anymore, and so that's the beauty of working with soft clay and having a hard fired piece at the end.
How is the texture achieved on these pieces?
Kind of a not very exciting way, which is a piece of netting that I press into the clay when it's still wet. So the way I used to try to wrap the whole thing in netting and press it in with a little brayer. But over time, I realized that it was easier just to cut the netting into smaller pieces, and it's very low tech. I press in the netting and I roll it over and I press down on it until it gets just enough of a minimal amount of texture to make it work. Next. Well, I like this combination. And so the color range is a little bit greater than it sounds, black, white, and red, because we got brown in here. So that's one of those two pieces. And I think we just talked about all four of those.
Yeah. And feel free to talk about the questions that we prepared. Kathleen, feel free to jump in and ask some questions if you'd like.
Sure. Anna, would you be up for that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, I think I'd like to talk about your use of color, and it seems very charged, I would say. There's something about your creating a history for each piece, making marks, eroding surfaces, as if the piece had a very long life before it came into being through you. And that comes through in the color. And we talked about Robert Ryman, the use of white, and white having a real power. You know, you think it's the absence of color, but in your case, and I think also Robert Ryman, Cy Twombly, Agnes Martin, there's that spareness of the white, but it has just such a statement about it, such a power about it. And then the red and the brown calls to mind adobe and brick of ancient buildings. So anything you'd like to say, you have touched on it quite a bit. But...
Right. No, I can speak forever, but I won't bore you. But that's a great lineup of issues that you brought up, and just on the color business, basically, the best thing I can say is, for me, 3 colors is enough, and white, black, and red, because the reds, there's 100 reds in there, the red clay, the red slip, and the oxides. So basically, I don't use glazes. The surfaces are slip, and the colors are oxides mixed with slip. Mm-hmm. And that it gives me plenty to work with. I don't need a lot of variety in my work. The texture is inspired by Hans Koper, who's also one of my models of really amazing ceramic work. And he masters that effect of slip, drying quickly, allowing for a scumbled effect, and more interesting than bare clay, but not too assertive. Mm-hmm. But I love the association that you're seeing with Robert Ryman and Cy Twombly, because they're 2 of my most favorite artists. So never expected to be in the same paragraph with them. Regarding history and the erosion of time, there's this wonderful phenomenon that just is implicit with clay, and around the world, from the big heaps of porcelain shards that you see in Jingagen, or places where clay is central, to any kind of village that has a history of its life because of its shard piles. Shard piles are everywhere. You can't really get rid of them because they are impervious. But the remains of ceramic objects are the signposts of history, and that's just a wonderful history to be part of as a maker. Where did they cook their meals? Was there a village here? There's beauty in the textured and weathered surfaces that ask the questions that tell a story. So that's one of the joys to most people who work in clay, is that association with history, and that's what inspires a ceramist to use those surfaces, those textured and weathered surfaces, are just feel like they're part of the story. And so that's from my point of view. The people who work in shiny glaze and bright colors are being inspired by something other than that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Anne. Mm-hmm.
And if there's anything else you would like to add, I can go back to any of those slides if that will help.
Okay. Well, let me look at my notes here. And you asked, what are some of your influences? How has art made a difference in your life? Making it, seeing it, being inspired or provoked by it. And what I wanted to do was put a little twist on that and ask the question differently. How did my life experience make a difference in my art? And I thought that was an interesting possibility to address, because it doesn't seem as though there's too much you would gain as a graphic designer that would prepare you for a world of working in clay. But in fact, I feel that there's in my own creative development that I gained much from the design firm experience. I understood when I entered, when I put my hands on the wheel for the first time, um, I I thought I realized that my decades of experience as a practicing graphic designer and creative director, and as a professor of graphic design, influenced and inspired my work in that they eased my entry into ceramics in a few helpful ways. Um, iteration to improve on an idea was already a skill that I had as a designer. Um, the ability to judge whether it's a layout um, or a pot. I came into the clay field already knowing how to make judgments about the visual characteristics of what I'm working on and adjust or trash as needed. And so, you get pretty tough in the design world, especially if you're a teacher or a student, because um, the critiquing process is ruggedly tough, and it's helpful to come into a new field and have that experience, and a practiced eye is really amazingly valuable when you take up a new medium. If you have been, developing vaccines in the lab your whole life, and then you switch to ceramics, you'd have trouble. So, but uh, to switch from an adult life that was centered around art, in which my association with the Traver Gallery certainly played a role. My former husband, Bill Traver, is the founder of the Traver Gallery in Seattle, and my daughter, Sarah Traver, is the director. And in that context of a practiced eye, I stepped in with a big advantage. And I have designed more gallery invitations than anyone ever.
Oh, thank you. That's a great insight into moving from design to the art
Mm-hmm.
to the art
Yeah.
form itself. Yeah, well, thank you. I'd love to leave some room for a question and answer at the end. So I'll move on to Greg, and let's see if I can get these slides to move forward. And I'll let you have the floor, Greg. Thanks.
Great, thanks a lot. I'm going to forego my statement for the sake of time and let the work kind of speaks for itself, I guess, for today. So I don't mind if Kathleen wants to ask the questions that we had prepared here, or how you want to do this. What would you like to do? I can go right at the top where you said.
When did you know you wanted to be an artist?
Oh,
How about that
yes.
one?
Okay. Well, before I knew what an artist was or meant, I think. I still don't understand it entirely. I can tell you that my first intense reaction to art that I remember was looking at a very large framed color print hanging on a wall at the top of the stairs at the entrance to my elementary school, very young. It was called Snap the Whip by Winslow Homer.
Hmm.
And I loved looking at it, and I became engrossed in it. I felt like I was there, and I didn't think of it as art. I just was stunned, even looking at a print. My teacher knew where to find me, of course, if I was late for class, because I'd probably be standing in front of that print. Haven't seen the original. I think it's at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York, and I do need to see that for the first time sometime here. So I would say, when did I know I wanted to be an artist? That was probably the first inkling as a very young child. So, did you want me to ask?
Well, I just want to jump in and say you sounded like you were transfixed as a child, as a small boy, in front of that print of Homer's, and that's the one of the chain of the kids, right?
Right.
On the lawn. In my short time at the Jeanette Best Gallery on the floor, while your show has been up, yours and Anne's show, I've noticed that people linger in front of your paintings, and in front of Anne's ceramics and vessels. And Greg, they just kind of enter the world that you've portrayed, and there's a wide variety of subject matter in the paintings in the exhibition. And I would talk with some of the folks because they would just say, wow, these are wonderful. The whole show is wonderful. And you think of that statistic that most people in an art museum spend 3.6 seconds in front of a painting. Well, people are spending a lot more time in front of your paintings, painting by painting.
Good.
And so whatever happened to you in front of that Winslow Homer is happening to the people who are looking at your paintings now. So I think it's a really nice full circle.
Well, that's a nice. I'm happy that people are looking at them. I get the feeling in this day of digital, which is what we're in right now, I know that painting does not translate digitally. Photography can pull that off. Ceramics, you can't appreciate it unless you're there looking at it. And of course, you can't touch it once you're there. But I've always believed that, I think it comes from a Chinese maxim lesson. It goes something like, you cannot know a painting unless you own it. It's a loaded kind of statement, but what it boils down to, obviously, is when you own something, you've purchased or you've acquired the freedom to look at it whenever you want and share it with whomever and whenever you want. And if it's purchased by a museum or a gallery and they show it, then that's another way that it can be shown. And I personally believe that it takes time to know a painting. This 30-second interval reminds me of selfies at the Grand Canyon. I don't know what it is, but I know that when you own something or you look at it over and over again, which is what I do a lot in a lot of museums, when they have a show, I'll go many, many times. I seek out originals as much as I possibly can, but that's good to know. You had a question about this. Your questions are going to get all changed around in all of this presentation, so I'll just throw them in as they look at it. I'm glad you put this one on the screen. This was a whole series of experiments, really. I was frustrated a bit with my brushwork. You mentioned the slip on your ceramic pieces. I wanted to stop for a moment because I found myself fussing too much and not really getting into the paint and the brush and so on. And I wanted to see how much I could paint without painting. And just let one brushstroke say as much as possible. So I got out the special kind of paper that is really well sealed, and I have hundreds of sheets of it, and taped off a rectangle and worked from sketches or reference photos and things to remind me of what's around, and then I just dove in. I have this great admiration for Asian art. And this is, while it's not a Sumi painting by any stretch of the imagination, but it reminds me of that kind of thing where you're trying to get the most you can out of one color. Anne uses a black slips, I guess, and white slips. And I'm kind of doing the same thing, except it's more representational. And I was fascinated by, I wish you had a close-up of that driftwood on the top there that looks kind of like an animal perch. I was stunned at how little I had to paint to actually get all of that to appear. I don't know if you can zoom in on that or not, but so I did several others in the show. There are many pieces like that. You might think that I fussed forever to do that, and I really didn't. I just gained control of my fingernails, pieces of stick that I sharpened, rubbing, wiping. fingerprints, handprints. This is finger painting to the nth degree, I guess you'd call it. I just didn't, and one fan brush. So I learned that you can say a lot with very little with this kind of work, and I continue to do this kind of thing. I enjoy it very much. But now this is an interesting one. I did it quite a while ago. One thing I like to do is spend a lot of time in a place. I think that for my style, just like I hope that people will spend time looking at the work. One thing to know is that oil painting is very difficult for me, but I love that difficult part of it. I like to get to know a place before I can paint it. I walk around, I sketch, I draw, I observe. You mentioned in one of your questions, you said that in your works is about seeing and being discreetly aware of the world around you and the commitment that it takes to make art, to create art. And you asked about the word discreetly, and maybe this one would apply to that. What does it mean in my creative process? Well, discreet is a pretty awkward word. It has lots of different meanings to it, actually. When I say discreetly, what I mean is I approach the subject matter in an unobtrusive way. In other words, I could be walking down this side street off of Water Street in Port Townsend, and I don't want to be seen. I really don't. I don't make a big deal of myself, and I sketch quietly and maybe secretively, you might say that, but where I might photograph off my hip, I don't want to compose in the lens. I just more of a Walker Evans style of photography where you're capturing an unprepared moment by a subway rider or something like that. But it's that kind of discreet approach to the subject matter and not being intrusive and making a big show of things. That's very important, and it takes many visits and lots of work to do that. And then, of course, when I get in the studio, it takes a lot of time, not just painting, but just deciding what would look good painted and what I really want to say. So I take time to say something. I'm not the type that will crank out a picture. I actually try to tell a story of sorts. So to come back to your original observation about people staying there and looking, I'm happy because what's the point? Just, I want to be a little quirky, a little interesting, not pure illustration, but what's going on here? And I think that when you stand in front of an image, a painting in my case, you're going somewhere, okay? When you stand in front of a painting, you're going somewhere. Where are you going to go? It's up to you. But a good painting will leave you as a different person when you walk away from that little journey you took. So I try to paint so that I would enjoy it. And I cannot control what a viewer will see, nor do I want to. So I'm at a happy place right here when people do stand and look at them and if they find them interesting, because, well, that's a good state to be in as an artist, not to have to conjure something and not be honest about it. Anyway, that's a long answer, but hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yep. I want to make sure you have time for your questions. I prepared a lot of things, but I don't mind not talking about them. I mean, the work is what we're here for, so I don't mind if you have a deadline of 8 o'clock. I'd love to hear what people are thinking.
Well, great. We can open it up for questions from everyone. If you just want to unmute, we're a small group here, so I could leave these slides up and we can just start asking questions.
I don't have a question, but I want to share an appreciation. Kathleen, so I haven't seen the show yet, which I'm heartbroken. I didn't see the show before the talk, but I do want to share the appreciation of Anne's work. You know, Kathleen, you bringing in Robert Ryman and Cy Twombly. As a former New Yorker, I know their work well, know one of them, and I see the connection. And Anne, just as somebody who has, you know, started my art life in design and ceramics. I mean, yeah, in Denmark of all places. But anyway, I just have a deep appreciation, and I want to share that of what I'm seeing. And you know, I'll be there tomorrow, definitely, to see the work in person. But and both of you, I'm loving what I'm seeing. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I've taken copious notes from both of you. I mean, get the most you can out of one color. I'm a painter now, like, yeah, that resonates. So, I mean, I'm taking away so much from this talk, and thanking all four of you, Kathleen, Michael, and sorry,
If any of
Kevin.
if any of you in the group,
yeah.
if any of you in the group here would like a copy of my answers, I can only speak for myself. Just write to me and I'll send you them. They were good questions. I appreciate Kathleen's inquisitive mind here. She asked very good questions, and we need another hour to do it. But lacking that, if anyone's curious about the questions and how they were answered, you don't have to take so many notes. I'll send them off to you. That's fine.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, this is
Michael,
Dale.
I'd like to hear about how you ended up pairing Anne and Greg's work, because you're the master stroke here. You're the one who brought them together.
Yeah, I could say that briefly. And Dale, I heard you briefly, and let me just speak to that, and I'll get right to Dale's question. Well, actually, we had a committee process several years ago that brought Greg's proposal to the table, and we accepted the proposal. And so it was a group of us that were all looking at proposals, and we saw the large work, and there was sculpture as well in the proposal, but we really resonated with the paintings, and so we kind of shelved that for a while. The pandemic happened, and then there was just a lot of pause and delay. But as we moved forward, it was always on my plate to try to find another artist to show with Greg, and it so happened that one of our coworkers at Northwind knows Anne personally and suggested Anne's work, and I had a quick look at that right away, and had seen some at Traver Gallery many moons ago. So I was very excited to have that connection, and reached out, and willingly said yes. So I just felt like the two works were really complementary, and had a very good conversation going between them. So yeah. Dale.
Thank you for having the insight.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, this is fun work, and I'm glad Kathleen's going to be jumping right into this. So, Dale, you had a question.
Yeah, I'm just gonna poke in here by Anne. get an echo from my laptop. Greg, I was just checking out your monochromes on your website, and you've done, at least on your website, you have 8 or 10 of them, and they're just beautiful. And I was wondering if you mentioned sort of you moved into these monochromes, you were using your fingernails, your hands, whatever you were probably finding, one fan brush. What do you feel like you learned from that process? And then were your paintings changed after you went back to full
Oh
color
gosh,
work, I
that's
guess?
such a difficult question. I'm wrestling with the devil. I think, I don't know if any of you have read the Zen and the Art of Archery. Wonderful book about a German fellow who goes to Japan to learn how to use a bow and arrow, and he decides he's going to learn how to do that, and that he would take a class from a master. He thought he would do it in a month or so, and ends up staying there for 5 years. And learned that the teacher didn't have to say anything, as frustrated as he was, in order to teach. He had to observe very carefully. He learned that you don't pull a bow, you push it away. He learned a ton of things, but the most important thing he learned is don't look at the bullseye, because you'll miss it every time. Long story short, painting in black and white is not looking at the bullseye. It's simply letting you be yourself. And it takes a little bit of courage, but you have to let go. With prepared fingers, prepared tools, learning how the paint behaves with certain binders or certain medium to stiffen up, learning when to wipe and when not to wipe, and push and pull and so on. And letting your drawing that's underneath, that little sketch that kind of got you started, show through. And I think what I learned is to let go of myself. And they're probably some of the strongest pieces that I have, although they don't satisfy me in a way that other ones do. I think it's a little risky to say one thing is better than others. Like this child, I love this child more than I like that one. They're all part of me. So coming away, I felt very good. I went back to my painting and I did paint better in color. I don't know if you look at the lighthouse, or here, this is a good one here. This comes, I think, after that. I'm trying to remember, maybe not, but it's in that same vein. It seems like a very sentimental painting and maybe kind of oh, how nice, and then walk away. But if you stop for a minute and look at the energy that's going on with these mellow, if you could zoom in on a petal, you would see that it was made with basically 2 strokes and a smear. And did I paint every branch? No, because it doesn't matter. There would be a time in the past where I would have painted that, but I didn't. The sky is pure. Just the shingles are the same thing. It's like, I really like looking at Anne's ceramics because I see a cedar shingle in that thing. It's really that. And if you look to the right of the mallow, there's hardly anything there. It's really nothing there. But the illusion is the only thing left. And I think the most important thing I learned is to let go, stop aiming at the target, close your eyes, philosophically speaking, but I don't know, I'm kind of rambling. It's a very, very hard question because I fight with being too illustrative and too free. And in fact, I was going to talk about the Northwest School of Art and Mark Tobey and Graves and those guys. There was a question in here that said, who do you identify with, or who inspired you? And there are plenty of people. Everybody's noticed Winslow Homer, and everybody knows that I obviously have looked at perhaps Wyeth, perhaps Hopper in some sense. Sure, I look at them, but I didn't look at them for subject matter, so to speak. It was really just to learn how to paint. But the Northwest School, I'm a real believer in regional painters and regional painting and getting to know your area. And I'll quickly sum it up by just saying, and you'll get more if you ask for my answers to this. I really think what Graves and Callahan and Toby and others that were working at during the 30s and 40s were really onto something important that is really wonderful here in the Northwest. And if I'm heading anywhere, I'm heading maybe not toward the mysticism of Graves, anything like that, but just to imbue my work with an even deeper and more suggestive kind of thing going on. So that's where I'm heading, but I don't think I answered your question very well, but enthusiasm is there.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
All right.
I thought that was a great answer. It really, really filled with meaning. So thank you for sharing that.
Kathleen, do you have any last questions?
Oh, I think we've covered
Yeah.
lots of them. I just thank you both for being so open about your work and your processes. And now I see even more sympathy between the two of your works. You know, in the different mediums, I see connections that weren't apparent to me before. And now when I go back in tomorrow, I'm going to look even more closely and see these connections.
So why don't I ask one last question? I mean, answer one last question, because it's very short and unimportant. And that was your question, Kathleen, about why was there a little stand-up mirror on the table where I throw? And the answer is, I thought it was really amazing that you mentioned that. I don't think it's if you really look hard, it's way back there. But there's a little, dressing table mirror that's on my wheel. And the purpose of it, seemed so clear to me, but I can see why it wouldn't be, is that I don't make symmetrical objects. I make asymmetrical objects. So I have to keep an eye on what's going on all the way around, or I'm not going to be happy with the result.
Now it makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of symmetry, in fact. So when I start a piece, I started on the wheel, and after I get up and get a little height, I switch over to coil building, because that way I can really control the form and have the interesting little bumps and push outs, and it's much more pleasing to me to do it that way.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you both for the presentation. And I have to say, in just summing up 2021, we've had these several pairings of artists who did not know each other prior, and whose work was in that space, just talking to each other constantly for the 4 or 8 weeks or however long we had the exhibit, and then learning about both of you in this forum has been an extension of that. And I'm just, this is the fun work of curating and just seeing that synergy. And it's just been great to see this exhibit go up. And I think just a shout out to our exhibit designer, Jay Haskins, who puts wonderful compositions together with other people's work. And it's just amazing. I'm in awe of how it looks. So I do encourage you all to go out and see it. We are open. It's Thursday through Monday, 12 to 5. So, let's see, there's a chat here. I just want to hit before. We got to thank
Jim.
Yep.
Jim just left a note. Anyway.
Yeah, wonderful. All right. Well, without further ado, we're right on the 8 o'clock hour. If anyone has anything further, we can gather up Anne and Greg's questions or answers to their questions and maybe post those. I'll
Yeah.
leave that to Kathleen to kind of organize, but that would be a really, really rich thing. I think they were really insightful questions. I got a chance to look at them. So
Yeah, very good questions.
Yeah, that would be lovely. And I just personally want to thank both artists for coming in, and Michael and Kathleen for putting this together. You never know what to expect in an artist talk, but I've been sparked. So thank you. So thank you.
Good to hear.
wonderful. All of you have a really great evening, and we'll see you at the gallery.
Okay,
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
I'll be there.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.